There are classic cars that make us fall in love at first sight, and then there are the ones that leave us staring in disbelief. In an era famous for elegance, chrome, and bold style, some designs somehow went terribly wrong. Awkward proportions, strange faces, and ideas that should never have left the drawing board all found their way onto the road. Can you believe that these classic cars are truly unapologetically ugly? The 1958 Ford Edsel occupies a singular, almost mythical place in automotive history, not merely as a commercial failure, but as a rolling lesson in how ambition, fear, and corporate confusion can physically manifest themselves in steel and chrome. When the Edsel debuted, it was meant to redefine the American automobile. Ford had invested enormous resources into research, focus groups, marketing studies, and internal planning, convinced that it could identify a perfect gap in the market between Ford and Mercury. What emerged instead was a car that looked like it had been designed by committee, revised by panic, and finalized by compromise, with the now infamous vertical oval grille becoming the symbol of everything that went wrong. The grille itself is impossible to ignore. Tall, upright, and deeply recessed, it dominated the entire front fascia, splitting public opinion instantly and violently. Some likened it to a horse collar, others to a toilet seat, and many more to a face frozen in a moment of surprise or horror. Unlike other controversial designs that soften with time, the Edsel's front end never found redemption. Chrome trim tried desperately to frame it, headlights strained to balance it, and the hoodline attempted to lead the eye away, but nothing worked. Wherever you looked, your gaze was dragged back to that vertical oval, as if the car itself insisted on confrontation. Owners recalled stopping for fuel and being surrounded not by admiration, but by confusion, jokes, and unsolicited opinions. The Edsel did not fade into the background. It demanded attention, whether wanted or not. What made the situation worse was that the rest of the car was not especially ugly on its own. In isolation, many Edsel body lines reflected typical late 1950s American optimism, with sweeping fenders, tasteful tail fins, and heavy chrome accents. But the grille poisoned the entire composition. No matter how elegant the side profile or how dramatic the rear, the front end overwhelmed everything, creating a visual imbalance that felt unsettling. It was as if several different design philosophies had collided in one place, each pulling the car in a different direction. Designers later admitted that last-minute changes, driven by fear of being too conservative, had pushed the front end into caricature territory. The Edsel became a car that tried to look futuristic without understanding what the future actually wanted. Public reaction was brutal and immediate. Showrooms filled with curious onlookers, but curiosity did not translate into sales. Potential buyers walked around the car, stared at the grille, and walked out shaking their heads. Owners who did buy one often described a strange mix of pride and embarrassment. Some loved the exclusivity and the sheer audacity of owning something so different. Others admitted they grew tired of being the subject of jokes, questions, and outright ridicule. Children pointed, strangers laughed. Parking an Edsel in public meant accepting that it would become a conversation whether you wanted one or not. Unlike cars that age into charm, the Edsel aged into legend as a warning. The psychological impact within Ford was profound. Executives who had championed the project saw careers stall or end. Designers became more cautious, terrified of being associated with another Edsel-level miscalculation. For years afterward, American car design retreated into safer, more conservative shapes. The Edsel didn't just fail, it scared an entire industry into restraint. Its name became shorthand for disaster, invoked whenever a product launch went wrong, even outside the automotive world. No other car has achieved that level of symbolic infamy purely through appearance and perception. Ironically, time has given the Edsel a strange form of immortality. Today, it is instantly recognizable, which is more than can be said for many successful cars of its era.
Collectors own them not because they are beautiful, but because they represent a moment when Detroit reached too far and exposed its vulnerability. Seen through modern eyes, the Edsel is fascinating in its failure. It is not ugly in a lazy or accidental way. It is ugly with intent, with confidence and enormous corporate backing behind it. That makes it unsettling, almost tragic. The 1958 Edsel stands as proof that ugliness is not merely about bad proportions or awkward details. It is about misunderstanding the audience, the moment, and the emotional language of design. The Edsel tried to force admiration instead of earning it. It tried to look bold without coherence, futuristic without clarity, and premium without grace. In doing so, it became the most famous ugly car ever built, not because it was the worst-looking object on four wheels, but because it failed so publicly, so expensively, and so memorably that its very name became a cautionary tale. Even today, decades later, no angle truly saves it, and no amount of nostalgia can fully soften its impact. The Edsel does not ask to be liked. It simply exists, staring back at you, frozen in chrome, forever surprised that no one understood it.
The 1961 Plymouth Valiant is one of those cars that feels less like a finished design and more like a compromise frozen in steel. A vehicle that seems to carry the visual evidence of internal conflict in every panel. It arrived at a moment when American car styling was desperately searching for a new identity. The tail-fin era was collapsing under its own excess, but no one at Chrysler quite knew what should replace it. The result was a car that looks as though several designers were pulling it in opposite directions, each convinced they were right and none willing to fully surrender. What rolled out of the factory was not a clean break with the past, nor a confident step into the future, but something awkwardly suspended between both. The front end is where the confusion announces itself immediately. The nose bulges outward with a swollen, almost organic shape that feels disconnected from the rest of the body. It lacks the crisp authority of earlier Chrysler products and the restrained clarity that would define later ones. Instead, the front looks soft and uncertain, as if it is leaning forward to ask a question it is not sure how to phrase. The grille, neither bold nor subtle, sits there without a clear visual mission. It does not dominate, but it does not disappear either. It feels like an afterthought, a placeholder meant to be revised later, but somehow approved as final. The front headlights float in the design rather than anchoring it, contributing to the sense that nothing on the face has agreed on a common theme. Move along the sides and the tension only deepens. The body lines curve in ways that suggest motion but never commit to it. There is a faint suggestion of fins at the rear, but instead of thrusting outward with confidence, they curl inward, almost apologetically. They look like fins that realized too late that fins were no longer fashionable and tried to retract themselves mid-gesture. This inward curve creates an odd visual pull, making the rear of the car feel pinched and hesitant. The belt line never quite settles, rising and falling without a clear rhythm, which adds to the impression that the car is slightly out of alignment with itself. Proportionally, the Valiant feels off in a way that is difficult to pinpoint but easy to sense. The car looks tall in the wrong places and heavy where it should be light. The cabin seems to sit awkwardly on the body, as if it were lowered onto a platform not originally meant for it. There is a faint, almost unsettling sense that the metal is soft, as though the shape could continue to sag if left in the sun too long. Some enthusiasts have described the Valiant as looking melted, and while that may sound cruel, it captures the way the surfaces lack tension. Instead of sharp creases or confident planes, the car relies on bulges and curves that never fully resolve into elegance. What makes the Valiant's appearance particularly frustrating is that beneath the awkward styling lay a genuinely intelligent automobile. It was well-engineered, mechanically durable, and offered practical packaging at a time when compact cars were becoming increasingly important. Owners often praised its reliability, its solid road manners, and its ability to absorb daily abuse without complaint.
That contrast only made the design harder to forgive. People wanted to like the Valiant. It made sense on paper, and it performed its role faithfully. Yet every time you approached it, the styling seemed to ask you to excuse it, to look past it, to pretend it was something else. Public reaction mirrored this conflict. Some buyers grew fond of the Valiant in a stubborn, defensive way, insisting that its looks were distinctive or European, though it truly resembled neither. Others never stopped feeling vaguely uncomfortable around it, as if the car itself was slightly embarrassed to be seen. In parking lots filled with sharper, more confident shapes, the Valiant stood out not because it was bold, but because it seemed unsure of itself. It was the automotive equivalent of a sentence that keeps revising itself halfway through. Over time, the 1961 Valiant has earned a kind of grudging respect, not for its beauty, but for its honesty. It is a snapshot of an industry in transition, caught between excess and restraint, between flamboyance and efficiency. The Valiant wears that uncertainty openly, without disguise. It does not age into elegance, but it does age into meaning. Looking at it today, you can see the argument that shaped it, still unresolved, still visible in every curve and bulge. It is not a car that fails because it is ugly in a simple way. It fails because it cannot decide what it wants to be, and in that indecision, it accidentally became unforgettable.
The 1962 Citroën Ami 6 feels like the moment when Citroën's famous engineering confidence crossed the thin line between bold originality and outright provocation. This was not simply a car designed to stand out, it was a car that seemed almost hostile to conventional taste, as if its creators were daring the public to either evolve or look away. In an era when most European family cars were settling into safe, predictable shapes, the Ami 6 arrived looking like nothing else on the road, and it made no attempt to apologize for that fact. The backward slanted rear window remains the centerpiece of its visual controversy, but its impact goes deeper than simple oddity. The roofline drops sharply and then angles forward, creating a visual break that interrupts the natural flow of the car. Human eyes are trained to follow lines that move rearward with motion, yet the Ami 6 actively resists this instinct. The result is a constant sense of visual tension, as if the car is perpetually stopping itself. Many first-time viewers assumed the car had been damaged or modified incorrectly, and even seasoned motorists needed a moment to process what they were seeing. It is one of the few automotive shapes that can still surprise people decades later. Citroën defended this design with logic, and in true Citroën fashion, the logic was not trivial. The reversed glass reduced turbulence, kept rain and dirt from clinging to the window, and allowed the trunk to open wider without extending the body. In isolation, these were clever solutions. The problem was that the eye does not care about airflow diagrams. Visually, the rear of the Ami 6 appears compressed and awkward, with a hunched stance that makes the car look perpetually burdened. The taillights seem like afterthoughts, and the rear paneling feels tight, as if the car is wearing a jacket one size too small. The front end, however, tells a calmer and almost reassuring story. The headlights sit high and wide, giving the car a gentle, observant expression. The grille is modest, restrained, and almost elegant, hinting at the design language of larger Citroëns. From certain angles, especially head-on, the Ami 6 looks like a sensible, slightly quirky French sedan. This only amplifies the shock when one walks around it. The car does not gradually reveal its strangeness, it ambushes the viewer with it. In profile, the Ami 6 becomes a study in contradiction. The tall cabin, narrow track, and sharply defined roof give it a top-heavy appearance, yet the car does not look robust. Instead, it feels delicate, almost nervous. The proportions suggest a vehicle that is unsure of its own stance, as though it would shift if observed too closely. There's a faint sense of movement even when parked, but not the kind associated with speed or elegance. It feels like tension held in sheet metal. What makes the Ami 6 truly fascinating is that its visual chaos masks a deeply competent machine.
Underneath the strange body was classic Citroën thinking: long travel suspension that floated over broken roads, light steering, and a cabin designed for comfort rather than style. Rural drivers loved it for its ability to absorb potholes and carry loads over poor surfaces without complaint. Farmers, shopkeepers, and families found it reliable, easy to maintain, and surprisingly spacious. For many owners, the odd shape stopped being strange after a few weeks and became simply their car, while everyone else remained confused. This split perception defined the Ami 6's social life. In France, it became an object of affectionate debate. Some owners took pride in driving something that refused to conform, while others quietly admitted they liked it, despite knowing it was ugly. Outside France, especially in more conservative markets, the reaction was far less forgiving. Critics saw it as proof that Citroën had lost its sense of proportion, and the car was often ridiculed in the press as an example of design gone wrong. Yet time has been strangely kind to the Ami 6. In an automotive world filled with smooth, anonymous shapes optimized by computers, its awkwardness now feels human. It looks like a car designed by people with strong opinions, rather than committees chasing averages. The Ami 6 did not try to be beautiful in the traditional sense. It tried to be different, functional, and intellectually provocative, even if that meant alienating half its audience. Today, the Ami 6 stands as one of the clearest examples of how far a manufacturer was once willing to go in pursuit of originality. It is not a car that grows prettier with familiarity, but it does grow more interesting. Its backward window, confused rear, and mismatched personality remain deeply unsettling, yet impossible to forget. The Ami 6 is not a failure of design so much as a refusal to compromise, and that stubbornness is exactly why it still sparks discussion. It is a rolling reminder that automotive history is not only shaped by beauty and success, but also by brave, strange decisions that leave a permanent mark on the collective memory.
The 1974 AMC Matador coupe feels like a car born out of anxiety as much as ambition. It arrived at a moment when American manufacturers were struggling to understand what the future was supposed to look like. Safety regulations were tightening, fuel concerns were rising, and the optimistic excess of the late 1960s had given way to uncertainty. AMC wanted to prove it could still be bold, still be modern, still surprise the market. The Matador coupe was meant to be that statement. Instead, it became a deeply uneasy object, a car that looks like it is physically carrying the weight of its era. The front of the Matador coupe is its most unsettling feature. The nose does not extend forward so much as it bulges outward, thick and rounded, as if swollen from internal pressure. The federally mandated bumpers are integrated into the body in a way that adds mass without clarity, making the entire front end feel heavy and blunt. The headlights sit recessed in sculpted cavities, neither exposed nor fully hidden, giving the car a strange half-blind expression. There is no clear face, no emotional cue. It does not look aggressive, friendly, or refined. It simply looks overbuilt, like a machine designed to survive an impact rather than move gracefully through space. From the side, the Matador coupe becomes an exercise in visual contradiction. The doors are enormous, the sides smooth to the point of emptiness, and the wheel openings appear almost apologetic, as if they were carved out reluctantly. The belt line runs high and flat, creating a slab-like profile that emphasizes width over motion. Then comes the roofline, which drops sharply and dramatically toward the rear. In theory, this should have created a sleek fastback. In reality, it looks like a collapse. The rear window plunges downward at an angle so steep that it feels uncomfortable, as if the roof is caving in on itself under its own weight. The proportions are perhaps the Matador coupe's greatest flaw. The car is long and wide, yet it lacks visual tension. There is no sense of coiled energy, no suggestion that the car wants to move. Instead, it feels static, heavy, and oddly top-loaded.
The middle of the car looks thick, while both ends seem stretched and unresolved. It gives the impression of a shape molded in clay and never fully refined, frozen at the moment before the designer stepped back to correct it. AMC's designers were trying to be futuristic, and in some ways they succeeded, just not in a way the public was ready to accept. The smooth surfaces, integrated bumpers, and lack of sharp edges anticipated later aerodynamic thinking, but without the benefit of modern proportions and detailing, those ideas manifested as bulk rather than sleekness. The Matador coupe does not look like the future. It looks like a prototype from an alternate timeline where design priorities were slightly misaligned. What deepens the irony is that the Matador coupe was not a failure everywhere. On the NASCAR circuit, its unusual shape proved effective. The very qualities that made it look strange on the street, its smooth sides and rounded nose, helped it cut through the air at high speeds. Drivers respected it, and it even won races. But this success only highlights the disconnect between functional performance and visual appeal. A car can work brilliantly and still look profoundly wrong. Public reaction was largely confusion mixed with quiet rejection. Some buyers admired AMC's courage and willingness to break from tradition, but many more simply did not know what to make of the car. It did not fit the muscle car image, yet it was too heavy and awkward to be seen as elegant. As years passed, its design aged rapidly. While other 1970s cars mellowed into nostalgic charm, the Matador coupe remained stubbornly uncomfortable to look at, its proportions forever tied to a moment of stylistic uncertainty. Today, the 1974 AMC Matador coupe stands as a cautionary artifact. It is not ugly because it was cheap or careless. It is ugly because it tried too hard to be different without fully understanding what difference should look like. It represents a company reaching beyond its resources and a design language struggling to reconcile safety, futurism, and identity. The result is a car that feels unfinished, emotionally distant, and visually heavy, like a styling experiment that escaped the studio before it had time to find balance. And yet, that failure is exactly what gives the Matador coupe its strange power today. It is unforgettable. It sparks debate, discomfort, and fascination in equal measure. In a world of increasingly anonymous automotive design, the Matador coupe stands as a reminder that boldness without harmony can leave a lasting scar, but also a lasting memory. It is not a beautiful car, but it is an honest one, frozen in metal as a record of a time when the future felt uncertain, and design reflected that anxiety without disguise.
The 1959 Opel Kapitan is one of those cars that looks like it was caught in a cultural tug-of-war, suspended uneasily between two very different automotive philosophies. On paper, it was supposed to embody American-inspired glamour, long, wide, dramatic, dripping with chrome and personality. But in practice, it feels perpetually unbalanced, a car that seems to have grown faster than its own proportions could manage. Every surface, every line, every ornament appears to be compensating, as if the designers were aware that the car was slightly too narrow, too short, or too restrained to carry its own ambitions. The front end alone tells the story of this struggle. The Kapitan attempts a bold statement, with a grille stretching wide across the fascia, chrome bars slicing horizontally in multiple layers, and large protruding headlights set in heavy surrounds. There is a sense of intent, of desire to be noticed, but it backfires. Instead of grandeur, the face feels cluttered, almost anxious. There is no single point of visual clarity, no natural flow for the eye to follow. Where a Cadillac or Chevrolet of the same year could overwhelm a European street with sheer confidence, the Kapitan simply overwhelms the observer's sense of proportion. It looks as though it is trying very hard to be something it cannot fully embody, like a student performing a monologue far above their experience. From the side, the imbalance is even more apparent. The Opel's long wheelbase and stretched body panels give the illusion of scale, but the proportions never resolve. The roofline appears too tall in the middle, creating a top-heavy impression. The belt line runs straight and unyielding, offering no sense of motion, no graceful arc to unify the front and rear. The doors and windows are broad but oddly spaced, making the cabin seem stretched in a way that feels awkward rather than elegant. The overhangs are generous but lack harmony with the rest of the body, giving the car a sense that it has been physically pulled from both ends in an attempt to mimic American grandeur. In movement, this awkward stretching translates visually to a lack of dynamism. The car doesn't flow, it drifts, appearing almost frozen in a pose it cannot sustain. The rear of the Kapitan is where the drama is pushed to an extreme. The tail fins rise boldly, trying to evoke the excitement of Detroit design, but without the width or mass to make them convincing. They jut upward aggressively, framing tail lights that are sharp but oddly small in context, and the trunk lid seems to bow under the weight of its own styling. From certain angles, it looks like the roofline is sagging, as though gravity itself is disapproving of the composition. While the designers clearly intended elegance and spectacle, the result is almost cartoonishly exaggerated. Dramatic, yes, but unsettling and disproportionate. The chrome work throughout the car reinforces this tension. Trim pieces are abundant, heavy, and multi-layered, but they do not unify the design. Instead, they call attention to the car's visual contradictions. Chrome around the windows, bumpers, and body sides competes rather than harmonizes. There is no clear rhythm to guide the eye. Where the American cars could use volume and mass to justify excessive embellishment, the Opel's relatively smaller scale only accentuates the sense of awkwardness. Underneath this visual turmoil, the Kapitan was technically competent. The engineering was solid for European standards, reliable engines, reasonable ride comfort, and an interior that offered practicality and refinement. On the road, it could carry passengers comfortably and provide a sense of prestige within Opel's lineup. But while it could perform admirably mechanically, it could not perform visually. It was a car caught between intention and execution, ambition and physical reality. The success of its design was stymied not by capability, but by the mismatch between European proportions and American stylistic excess. Public reception was similarly conflicted. Some admired the effort, the audacity to reach for glamour and presence in a class of cars that rarely dared to dream. Others were bewildered, unsure whether to laugh, admire, or turn away. Placed alongside more restrained European sedans, the Kapitan seemed ostentatious, awkward, and self-conscious. It was trying to impress, yet it betrayed its own limitations at every turn. Its exaggeration made it memorable, but not conventionally attractive. Its ambition made it fascinating, but also uncomfortable to the eye. In retrospect, the 1959 Opel Kapitan exists as a vivid lesson in automotive design. Ambition alone does not guarantee beauty or coherence. The car is not ugly because it is poorly built or unkempt. It is ugly because every line, every proportion, and every ornament is working against a unified vision. It is a car that tries to be more than it is, borrowing ideas from American flamboyance without the support in mass, width, or cultural context to make them convincing. And yet, this very tension makes it endlessly fascinating. The Kapitan is a rolling study in contrasts, a European car striving to be American, a vehicle that is both impressive and awkward, daring and uneasy in its visual audacity. The Opel Kapitan remains a testament to the perils and possibilities of design experimentation across borders. It is not a car to be forgotten. Even decades later, its proportions, its fins, and its chrome still provoke discussion, amusement, and admiration in equal measure. It stands frozen in history as a snapshot of a time when manufacturers reached for grandeur, sometimes landing gracefully, sometimes awkwardly, but always leaving an indelible mark on automotive memory. The 1959 Kapitan may never have achieved true beauty, but it achieved something equally lasting, the ability to make observers stop, look, and feel something profoundly specific, a mixture of awe, bewilderment, and historical curiosity that no conventional design could ever inspire. The 1970 Fiat 600 Multipla is one of those rare cars whose brilliance and absurdity exist in almost equal measure, creating a tension that makes it impossible to forget. At its core, it was an engineering marvel, a compact urban chariot that defied conventional thinking about space, functionality, and seating arrangements. Fiat's engineers had taken the tiny 600 platform and expanded it into a people carrier capable of transporting 6 occupants, an extraordinary feat for a vehicle barely longer than a modern compact hatchback. The interior layout was pure genius: bench seats that folded and slid, a cabin designed to maximize every cubic inch of space, and clever touches like easy access for passengers even in such a narrow vehicle. Practicality was absolute. Families could move comfortably, tradespeople could haul small loads, and city dwellers could park almost anywhere, all without the compromises typical of larger cars. Yet while the inside demonstrated foresight and ingenuity, the exterior seemed almost willfully defiant of conventional aesthetics. From the moment you laid eyes on it, the Multipla announced itself as something extraordinary, or perhaps something that had escaped a cartoonist's sketchbook. The bubble-like cabin rises abruptly from a tiny flat front end, giving the car a top-heavy appearance that immediately unsettles the eye. The windshield is pushed impossibly forward, making the round, wide-set headlights seem like eyes frozen in perpetual surprise. The stubby nose, combined with the almost vertical cabin, gives it a curious, almost insectoid visage, as though it has been designed more for functional volume than visual harmony. Its proportions make it look like it is perpetually leaning forward, bracing for something unknown, giving an impression of motion even at a standstill. Small wheels sit at the corners, apologetically supporting a body that appears to defy physics, further emphasizing the Multipla's peculiar stance. Viewed from the side, the design is equally confounding. The high, wide roofline dominates the car's profile, creating a cavernous interior but a visual imbalance that challenges the viewer's perception. The doors are tall but narrow, the windows small in relation to the body, and the body panels themselves are almost featureless, emphasizing height over elegance. The proportions feel exaggerated, like a caricature of a minivan, yet there is method in the madness. Every element exists to maximize interior space and utility. It is the kind of design that would horrify a stylist obsessed with symmetry, elegance, or flow, yet it succeeds in its mission of making an impossibly small car astonishingly usable. The rear of the Multipla is perhaps the strangest of all. The roofline continues its abrupt termination into a nearly flat, upright tail, with a hatch that seems barely able to contain the volume within. There is no tapering, no sculptural flourish, just pure function. This blunt, truncated rear contributes to the vehicle's cartoonish profile, emphasizing the top-heavy, almost comical proportions. Despite this, it remains highly practical. Loading and unloading passengers or cargo is straightforward, and the interior space remains uncompromised. Here, utility dominates over aesthetics, and yet somehow the Multipla's design feels coherent in its intent, if not in conventional taste. The public reaction was predictably polarized. Urban Italians quickly learned to love the Multipla for its practicality, clever interior design, and remarkable maneuverability. Its size allowed it to slip through narrow streets, fit into tiny parking spaces, and carry more passengers than its modest dimensions suggested. Drivers appreciated its engineering ingenuity, its reliability, and the fact that it turned the problem of cramped European city streets into an advantage. But outsiders, or even Italians at first glance, often found it shocking. The front end seemed almost comical, the proportions absurd, the bubble-like body alien compared to the sleek, long-nosed sedans and coupes of the era. Children laughed, adults shook their heads, and car enthusiasts debated whether it was a masterpiece of functional design or a stylistic crime against humanity. In this duality lies the Multipla's enduring fascination. It could not be universally admired, but it could not be ignored.
The Fiat 600 Multipla is a car of contradictions. Inside, it is practical, ingenious, and forward-thinking. Outside, it is strange, awkward, and almost cartoonishly disproportionate. Its design choices challenge traditional notions of automotive beauty, proving that functionality does not always coincide with aesthetics. Yet the Multipla's legacy is unassailable. It redefined what a small car could be, inspired countless future urban vehicles, and etched itself into automotive history as a car that was unforgettable in every possible sense. It is a vehicle whose visual eccentricity ensures it is never mistaken for anything else, whose interior cleverness continues to inspire admiration, and whose very existence challenges us to reconsider the boundaries of what a car can and should be. In many ways, the Multipla is a philosophical statement on automotive design itself. It dares to prioritize humanity over vanity, utility over style, and clever engineering over conformity. Even decades later, when parked among sleek modern minivans or compact city cars, it stands out with unapologetic audacity, a bubble-shaped manifesto that screams innovation and defiance in the face of conventional taste. It is a car that may never win beauty contests, but it wins respect for its vision, ingenuity, and ability to endure as one of the most unusual yet influential vehicles in automotive history. Its charm is subtle, layered, and contradictory, a practical miracle encased in a comically improbable shell, eternally reminding us that genius and strangeness can coexist in metal and rubber, wheel and window, dashboard and door.
The 1978 Ford Thunderbird represented Ford's attempt to merge luxury with the imposing presence Americans expected from a flagship personal coupe. Yet the result was a vehicle that often appeared overwhelmed by its own ambitions. From the moment you laid eyes on it, the car communicated weight and seriousness. Too much weight, too much seriousness. Its boxy proportions, sharp-edged body panels, and long, flat hood made it appear more like a block of steel on wheels than a sleek automobile. Designers had intended to create a sense of grandeur and sophistication, but the Thunderbird's lines ended up heavy-handed, lacking the elegance or fluidity that might have balanced such mass. The padded vinyl roof, a hallmark of luxury styling at the time, added a sense of ceremony, almost like a formal top hat draped across the roofline. Yet rather than elevating the car, it exaggerated its bulk, making the profile feel top-heavy and visually awkward. The expansive use of chrome on the bumpers, grille, trim, and mirrors was meant to convey opulence and prestige, but instead created visual clutter that distracted from the car's intended elegance. From the front, the wide, squared grille dominated the fascia, giving it a stern, almost glowering expression, while the long hood seemed to stretch the car forward in an ungainly manner. From the side, the Thunderbird's length and squared-off roofline made it appear as if the car were slowly sagging under its own weight, like a stately mansion on wheels struggling to stay upright. The rear, with its sharply boxed-off deck and small taillights set into oversized chrome surrounds, offered little visual resolution, leaving the car's proportions feeling unbalanced and top-heavy. Inside, the Thunderbird aimed to embody comfort and luxury. The cabin was spacious with broad bench seats, deep pile carpeting, and ample armrests. The dashboard carried all the hallmarks of late 70s American luxury: wood grain panels, analog gauges with gold-colored accents, and extensive padded surfaces. But even here, the sense of overstuffed opulence was evident. Controls were abundant but spread across a vast expanse, giving the impression of a room rather than a cockpit. While the interior delivered comfort and a soft, forgiving ride, it reinforced the car's image of excessive bulk, further emphasizing the contrast between intended elegance and actual visual heaviness.
On the road, the Thunderbird offered the expected smooth, cushioned ride, yet its handling reflected the visual cues: soft, lumbering, and heavy. Drivers experienced significant body roll in corners, with the suspension absorbing imperfections on the road at the cost of agility and precision. The car's mass and length made it feel ponderous in urban traffic, while highway cruising emphasized the sedan-like inertia, demanding attentive steering to keep it tracking straight in crosswinds. While it never aimed to be a performance car, the weight and size made even gentle maneuvers feel deliberate and slow, reinforcing the impression that the car's presence outweighed its grace. Public reaction mirrored the car's contradictions. Buyers appreciated the Thunderbird's space, quiet ride, and luxury features, but critics and enthusiasts often described it as ungainly and outdated even when new. Its boxy silhouette and ornate ornamentation made it age poorly, particularly as automotive styling in the late 1970s and early 1980s began favoring more aerodynamic, streamlined forms. Over time, what was meant to communicate sophistication came to feel cumbersome, with the Thunderbird serving as a cautionary tale in the hazards of prioritizing visual presence over proportional harmony. The 1978 Ford Thunderbird remains an emblem of late 70s American luxury excess, a car designed to impress, yet hampered by its own stylistic ambitions. Its bulk, boxy lines, and ornate details made it imposing but visually clumsy, and while it delivered comfort and status to its owners, it never achieved the elegance or timeless appeal its designers sought. Today, it stands as a striking example of how automotive styling can overwhelm even the most carefully engineered intentions, leaving behind a vehicle that commands attention but rarely admiration, a rolling statement of opulence weighed down by its own ambition, memorable for presence but awkward in form.
The 1967 Renault 10 is one of those vehicles whose strangeness emerges slowly, like a subtle oddity that only becomes fully apparent with prolonged attention. At first glance, it might seem like a conventional European compact sedan, a car meant for practical commuting, tight city streets, and reliable performance. Its narrow body, modest dimensions, and conservative proportions give an impression of modesty and functionality, but the longer you study it, the more the peculiarities of its design reveal themselves, each quirk layering on top of the next to create a car that is quietly, insistently unusual. The front end, for instance, rises slightly higher than you might expect for a car of its class, giving it a perpetually alert, almost anxious appearance. The hood, though relatively short, slopes in a way that emphasizes the height rather than the length, lending the car an unusual top-heaviness. The headlights are simple round units, positioned high on the fenders, and they seem almost incidental, as if the car had been designed first and the lights tacked on afterward. From certain angles, these lights give the Renault 10 a vaguely surprised or bewildered expression, a facial personality uncommon among sedans of the era. Some might call it endearing, others off-putting, but it is impossible to look at and feel indifferent. Moving along the side, the car's narrow width contrasts with the slightly elevated roofline, producing a tall, almost tower-like profile. The doors, slim and elongated, seem to reach upward rather than outward, reinforcing the impression of a stretched, vertical stance. The wheelbase, modest for its era, is further accentuated by short overhangs at the front and rear. This combination of tall roof, narrow body, and compact wheelbase creates a visual tension. The car seems simultaneously delicate and tentative, like it might topple forward or backward if nudged too hard. Even the rear deck and fenders, though small, contribute to this imbalance. The rear engine layout, one of Renault's distinctive engineering choices, necessitated a short trunk and compact rear structure, but visually it results in a rear end that appears heavier, almost anchored, while the front seems lighter and more anxious.
The roofline itself is deceptively simple. It sweeps gently from windshield to rear, but the proportions feel slightly off-kilter. From some perspectives, the cabin seems taller than the car's footprint warrants, creating a sense of compressed interior space that contrasts sharply with the car's exterior height. Windows are small relative to the roof, lending the car a slightly closed-in, introspective appearance. The combination of tall cabin, high roofline, and narrow body gives the Renault 10 a presence that is unusual for a compact. It asserts itself without aggression, strange rather than imposing, and memorable without being glamorous. Inside, the car's genius becomes apparent. Space is allocated intelligently. Rear passengers have more room than they might expect from the exterior dimensions, and front occupants enjoy a compact yet ergonomic environment. Controls are straightforward, levers and switches are placed logically, and visibility from the driver's seat is excellent, another testament to Renault's focus on practical function over aesthetic perfection. Yet even here, subtle visual oddities carry over. The dashboard, simple and utilitarian, emphasizes horizontal lines that stretch across the cabin, seemingly attempting to counterbalance the vertical tension of the exterior. The seats are tall and narrow, mirroring the car's external proportions, and the overall feel is compact but surprisingly livable. The interior demonstrates that while the Renault 10 may look odd from the outside, its engineering prioritizes human utility and comfort in a way that few other cars of its class managed. Public perception mirrored this duality of form and function. On the streets, the Renault 10 drew attention, not because it was flashy or aggressive, but because its peculiar proportions and slightly anxious expression made it a conversation piece. Children laughed and pointed, pedestrians paused for a second glance, and car enthusiasts debated whether it was a clever packaging solution or a design that had gone slightly awry. Many who owned the car grew to love it for exactly this reason. It was different, instantly recognizable, and offered a blend of practicality and reliability rare in the late 1960s European compact market. Yet even admirers had to concede that it was strange-looking, and its awkward proportions made it clear that Renault's priorities were in engineering ingenuity and interior utility, rather than conventional automotive beauty. The longer one examines the Renault 10, the more its personality emerges. There is a subtle nervousness in its stance, a quiet tension in its proportions, and an almost anthropomorphic alertness in the high, round headlights. The front seems almost eager, the rear grounded yet heavy, and the narrow profile emphasizes the verticality of the cabin. Each element interacts with the others in ways that are unexpected yet deliberate, creating a visual narrative of cautious pragmatism. This is a car designed to work first and look second. Its proportions, far from immediately offensive, convey a sense of purpose. It must be compact yet spacious, light yet structurally sound, economical yet functional. These competing demands produced a design that is subtly eccentric, a vehicle whose strangeness rewards patient observation. Ultimately, the 1967 Renault 10 is a car that grows in complexity the longer it is studied. Its tall front end, narrow stance, high roofline, and slightly surprised expression give it an unmistakable presence, one that is never truly aggressive but quietly assertive. Its rear engine proportions add visual weight at the back, creating a delicate tension with the lighter-looking front. Practicality and engineering excellence dominate its personality, even if traditional aesthetics take a back seat. In this way, the Renault 10 stands as a remarkable example of mid-century European compact design. Clever, functional, and undeniably strange. A vehicle that rewards the attentive observer with layers of visual character and subtle charm, leaving a lasting impression that grows richer with every glance.
The 1957 Nash Metropolitan is a study in contradictions, a car that embodies both audacious charm and confounding proportions, a vehicle that somehow manages to be functional while looking as if it might have been sketched by a cartoonist. On first encounter, it seems impossibly small, a microcosm of the American automotive landscape shrunk down and exaggerated in the most playful ways. Its narrow body, diminutive wheelbase, and stubby overhangs make it appear almost top-heavy, especially when contrasted with the generous curve of the roofline that rises above the cabin like a tiny dome crowning a whimsical palace. The front end, dominated by wide, round headlights perched too far apart and a small, smiling grille, gives the car a perpetually startled or innocent expression, a face that seems almost sentient in its astonishment. Chrome bumpers wrap generously around the extremities, exaggerating its compactness while giving it a miniature gravitas, as though the car is trying too hard to appear substantial for its size. Looking from the side, the Metropolitan's proportions are both playful and awkward. The doors are narrow yet tall, the cabin squeezed between exaggerated front and rear fenders, creating a tension in the visual rhythm that is impossible to ignore. The short wheelbase contributes to a lively, almost jittery presence on the road, giving it a personality that seems to hop along the asphalt rather than glide, lending a kinetic charm to every movement. Despite its diminutive size, the car's design communicates confidence. It refuses to shrink into anonymity, insisting on presence, character, and identity even in the shadow of larger, more conventional sedans of the era. Inside, the Metropolitan reveals the thoughtful engineering that belies its toy-like appearance. Nash cleverly maximized the limited interior space, accommodating 2 adults comfortably, with occasional seating in the back for children or compact cargo. The dashboard is simple but ergonomically considered, the controls laid out for intuitive use, and the cabin height ensures that occupants do not feel crushed or claustrophobic, despite the car's external compactness. The materials and finishes, while modest, reflect a careful attention to detail, a subtle elegance that contrasts with the exterior's playful awkwardness. Even the interior color schemes often echo the vehicle's distinctive two-tone paint, reinforcing a cohesive personality that stretches from visual statement to tactile experience. Public perception of the Metropolitan was as divided as its design cues. Some praised it for its unflinching quirkiness, celebrating it as a cheerful, city-friendly microcar with a bold personality. Others could not forgive its disproportionate forms, the oversized bumpers, the tall roofline, and the narrow track that gave it a slightly precarious stance on the road. Despite, or perhaps because of, this division, the Metropolitan established a strong identity, a car instantly recognizable on city streets, in parking lots, or even in photographs, whose very strangeness became its signature charm. Owners quickly adapted to its unique driving dynamics. The narrow track and tiny wheels required careful navigation through turns and traffic, but the car's small footprint made it an expert at squeezing into tight parking spaces, a functionality that the bulkier contemporaries could only envy. The Metropolitan's design also illustrates a delicate balancing act between whimsy and utility. While its exaggerated curves, oversized accents, and cartoonish expression give it a visual personality that could almost seem frivolous, the vehicle was fully capable of real-world motoring. Its engine, though small, offered adequate performance for city driving, and the suspension, though lightly sprung, was tuned to handle the occasional uneven street or pothole with surprising competence. Nash succeeded in creating a car that could exist comfortably in both practical and aesthetic realms, where owners could admire its boldness and engage with its usefulness simultaneously. Every element of the Metropolitan conveys an intentional playfulness: the rounded fenders, the prominent chrome trim, the expressive front fascia. Yet these design choices are not merely aesthetic. They imbue the car with a memorable personality, one that makes it impossible to misidentify.
Even decades later, the Metropolitan stands out as a vehicle whose proportions, while objectively unconventional, communicate character, individuality, and daring, defying the bland conformity of many of its contemporaries. Its stature may be small, but its presence is immense, a microcar that commands attention through sheer audacity. In the broader context of automotive history, the 1957 Nash Metropolitan occupies a unique niche. It is simultaneously a toy-like curiosity, a triumph of compact engineering, and a bold statement of design confidence. It demonstrates how a manufacturer can create a vehicle that is visually unconventional yet practical, small yet assertive, whimsical yet capable. Its proportions, narrow, top-heavy with exaggerated chrome and oversized expressive elements, make it a conversation starter, a cultural artifact, and an enduring symbol of automotive eccentricity. It is a car that invites affection, amusement, and astonishment in equal measure, a rare blend of practicality and personality that few vehicles have ever achieved. Ultimately, the Nash Metropolitan is more than just an odd-looking microcar. It is a testament to the power of confident design, a vehicle that challenges conventional aesthetics while delivering real functionality. Its small dimensions, exaggerated features, and playful expression create a car that is unforgettable, a tiny ambassador of character in a world of conformity. From its wide-eyed front fascia to its stubby, chrome-capped extremities, from its practical yet compact interior to its lively, animated motion on the road, every aspect of the Metropolitan communicates a singular, unapologetic identity. It may look like a toy, but it performs as a true automobile, offering reliability, agility, and charm, wrapped in a package so visually distinctive that it remains one of the most memorable microcars of the 20th century. Its legacy endures, not because it was perfect, but because it dared to be confidently, exuberantly different.
The 1973 Volkswagen Type 181, affectionately or grudgingly known as the Thing, is a vehicle whose very existence seems to declare war on traditional automotive aesthetics. Its design is unapologetically functional, a utilitarian statement rendered in steel and simplicity, with no pretense of elegance or refinement. Unlike the curvaceous Beetles or the sleek Carmen Gias of its era, the Thing wears its practicality like armor, every line and panel serving a purpose first, and appearance a distant second. Its flat, almost industrial body panels give it a boxy, uncompromising silhouette that seems to have been plucked from a military blueprint and pressed onto civilian roads. The upright windshield, which provides maximum visibility but little aerodynamic grace, adds to the sense that the car was designed to conquer terrain rather than win duty contests. The hinges, left exposed along the doors and hood, reinforce this mechanical honesty, a nod to simplicity that proudly shuns concealment. There are no hidden surprises, no elegant curves to soften the edges. Everything about the Thing screams directness, efficiency, and ruggedness. From the oversized round headlights perched on the front to the stubby bumpers and minimal overhangs, the car looks as if it could have been built in a garage in half a day, yet it survived rigorous production standards and off-road tests with surprising resilience. Its proportions are unconventional, even awkward. The cabin sits high, the wheels are small relative to the height of the body, and the doors, squared and thin, add to the impression of a crate on wheels. Inside, the simplicity continues. The dashboard is bare bones, the seating Spartan, and creature comforts nearly non-existent. Every switch, lever, and handle is straightforward, designed to withstand the rigors of utility without complaint. The interior's rawness mirrors the exterior, leaving no doubt that the Thing was a vehicle made for tasks, for rough roads, for the occasional mud puddle, rather than leisurely boulevard cruising or suburban styling competitions. Owners quickly realized that the car's value lay in its versatility: removable doors, fold-down windshield, and a rear cargo area that could accommodate nearly anything.
It was an honest, capable machine, but it never pretended to be beautiful. Public reaction to the Thing has always been mixed, oscillating between bemusement, derision, and reluctant affection. Its appearance provokes strong reactions. Some call it ugly, some call it fascinatingly utilitarian, and a few embrace its odd charm as a badge of independence from conventional tastes. Even among enthusiasts, admiration rarely stems from visual elegance. It comes from respect for the car's purpose-built nature and its ability to endure environments that would challenge ordinary passenger cars. The Thing's design is almost confrontational in its bluntness, daring observers to reconcile its awkward angles with its practical genius. On the road, the Type 181 performs as its appearance suggests, unpretentious, straightforward, and reliable. Its suspension is tuned for durability rather than comfort, and the flat panels contribute minimally to aerodynamics but maximally to the perception of solidity. The vehicle feels stable in off-road conditions, capable of handling gravel paths, forest trails, and uneven terrain with a kind of rugged confidence that belies its cartoonish proportions. Owners often report a peculiar satisfaction in driving something so honest, so bare bones, that there is no chance of being disappointed by unmet stylistic expectations. The Thing cannot fail to deliver on its promise. What it looks like? It is. Ultimately, the 1973 Volkswagen Thing is a study in deliberate contradiction. It is ugly by conventional standards, but impossibly charming in its forthrightness. It rejects glamour, beauty, and subtlety in favor of purpose, honesty, and rugged practicality. Its exposed hardware, upright stance, flat body panels, and boxy proportions combine into a car that is memorable, polarizing, and enduringly unique. The Thing is not meant to be admired in magazines or displayed at concours events. It is meant to be used, endured, and respected for its capability. Its legacy endures not because it is elegant, but because it dares to be honest, unrefined, and completely unashamed of its utilitarian ugliness, a true icon of functional design.